A girl vanished at 14 in 1970. 10 years later, she was found on a school field trip as a chaperone. But her name, fingerprints, and past had all been erased. Her name was Lorna Hayes. In 1970, Lorna was 14 years old and already carried herself like someone 10 years older. Life in Albany, New York, wasn't easy, especially not in her part of town, where neighbors only nodded and locked their doors by 7 p.m. Her father was a mechanic with a temper, and her mother was a woman who smoked in silence. Lorna spent most of her time at the public library, a small grimy building next to a laundromat, where the sound of spinning dryers often echoed into the quiet of musty pages. It was a Friday afternoon in May when everything changed. She had just finished school and was walking the cracked pavement home, a dog-eared copy of To Kill a Mockingbird tucked under her arm. Her eyes were fixed on the sidewalk, deep in thought, when a blue Ford Galaxy pulled up beside her near 6th and Tremont. "Hey, you need a ride?" the man called out. He wore a corduroy jacket, and his tie was slightly crooked. He smiled too wide. Lorna didn't recognize him, and she wasn't stupid. She kept walking, but the Galaxy crept alongside her. That's when he said, "Your dad asked me to come get you." His car broke down at the shop. That stopped her. The man was quick with names, knew her father worked at Crossman Auto, knew the street they lived on. Hesitant, she got in. She had a rule not to trust strangers, but this man wasn't a stranger anymore. Somehow he knew too much. She was never seen again. Her parents tore through the city, pasting her photo on telephone poles, begging TV stations to air her story. Her father even accused the police of brushing the case under the rug. He was right. Lorna was one of 6 girls who vanished that year in Albany. All were dismissed as runaway. But Lorna wasn't the type to run. A week after she disappeared, her shoe was found in a drainage ditch 3 miles from the city. It had blood on the sole. 10 years later, in 1980, everything began to unravel again. But back then, in 1970, her absence hollowed out everyone who knew her, especially her younger brother Daniel. He was just 9 at the time and idolized her like an older cousin more than a sister. He couldn't sleep for weeks, convinced that she'd return and climb through his bedroom window like she used to when she wanted to sneak out late at night. But Lorna never came back. 3 months before she vanished, Lorna had begun to change. She was always smart, too smart really. But lately she'd become secretive. She met with a man named Walter Briggs, an ex-cop turned security consultant, who lived on the edge of town. They were seen talking outside the library twice, and once she was spotted entering his house just after dark. Walter was questioned after she vanished. He claimed she'd been interested in law enforcement, asked him questions about forensics, missing persons and FBI database. She was curious, he said. Smart girl. Quiet. But that was all. When police searched his home, they found nothing. No signs of struggle. No hidden rooms. No photographs. Still, Walter moved out of Albany 6 months later. No one heard from him again. Daniel, even as a boy, always felt Walter had something to do with it. Years passed. In 1975, Daniel was 14, the same age Lorna had been when she vanished. He carried a pocket knife in his sock and studied criminal justice magazines at night. His parents had separated by then, grief slicing their marriage to pieces. His mother barely spoke. His father kept a loaded revolver in his drawer and drank most nights. Then something strange happened. Daniel was walking home from school when a rusted pickup nearly clipped him at the intersection of Liberty and Morris. It pulled over hard, skidding against gravel. A man in a heavy coat stepped out, holding what looked like a walkie-talkie. "You Daniel Hayes?" Daniel backed up instinctively. "Who's asking?" The man didn't answer. Instead, he reached under his coat and pulled a pistol. Gunshots rang out. 3, then 4. Daniel hit the ground behind a mailbox. A woman in a red raincoat across the street screamed. Someone pulled out a Colt .38 from a corner shop and fired back. The attacker bolted, disappearing into the alley. When police came, they found shell casings, but no blood. Daniel was shaken but unharmed. He gave a description: dark beard, scar under left eye, military boots. Nothing came of it. His father went ballistic. That night, he gave Daniel his old revolver. "You carry this now, no one's going to snatch another Hayes." Daniel was changed after that. He became sharper, meaner. He started hanging around older kids who had friends in the NY. He collected rumors about Walter Briggs, about girls who vanished, about men who weren't really gone but hiding under new names. It became an obsession. In 1978, he found a lid. Briggs had applied for a gun permit in Connecticut under the name Wallace Breen. Daniel took a Greyhound bus and camped outside the address listed. A week passed. Nothing. On the 8th day, a man came out. No beard, no scar, but the eyes were the same. Daniel followed him through town. The man visited a bookstore, a locksmith, and a travel agency. But on the 3rd day of following, Daniel was spotted. The man turned fast, tackled him to the ground in an alley behind a hardware store. "Why are you following me?" Daniel didn't flinch. "You knew my sister." The man didn't answer, just held him there, eyes drilling into it. Then he stood and walked away. 2 days later, Daniel's motel room was ransacked. Nothing was taken, but his revolver, which he'd kept under the pillow, was gone. He returned to Albany empty-handed, but he knew now this wasn't random. His sister's disappearance wasn't a one-off tragedy. It was a threat in something larger, something buried and protected. In 1979, 1 year before everything would shift again, Daniel dropped out of high school and joined a private security firm. They trained him in surveillance, combat, firearm. He was determined to find answers, no matter how deep they were buried, because somewhere out there, someone knew what happened to Lorna Hayes, and Daniel wasn't done asking. Before we continue, let us know in the comments where you are watching from today, and what time you are currently watching this video. If you enjoy stories like this, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more. The year was 1980. Fall was in full swing, and the leaves around Albany had turned crisp shades of red and gold. Daniel Hayes was 20 now, lean and sharp, with the kind of face that didn't forget things easily. He worked for a private security firm that handled everything from nightclub disputes to missing person investigations. It didn't pay much, but it kept him busy and close to the kind of people who knew things the cops wouldn't say out loud. He still thought about Lorna every day. On a chilly Thursday morning in October, Daniel was nursing coffee in a diner near Central Avenue when he got a call from an old friend who worked maintenance for a local high school. "Dan, I'm gonna say something that'll sound insane," the guy muttered. "I'm listening." "They took the 9th graders on a field trip to Fort Delaware this week." "Yeah?" "They came back yesterday. My wife's a teacher there. Says some lady came along as a last-minute chaperone. Nice, quiet, helpful, but listen, she looks exactly like your sister." Daniel froze. "What? She's older now." "Yeah. About mid-20s, but the face, man, it's her. My wife said she introduced herself as Ms. Langley, but she ain't on the school staff list. Nobody really knows who signed her on. She just showed up with paperwork from the district." "You sure it's not someone else?" "I swear on my life, Dan, it's her. Even has that mole above her eyebrow just like Lorna did." By the time Daniel hung up, his hands were shaking. That afternoon, he drove straight to the school. He didn't use the front entrance, he knew better. He waited in the back lot where staff usually exited. At 3:42 p.m., students began pouring out, followed by teachers and aides. Then she appeared. She wore a dark green coat and slacks. Her hair was in a loose bun. She wasn't a teenager anymore, not by a long shot. But Daniel knew her instantly. It was her walk, her eyes, the way she paused to help a kid tie his shoes. It was Lorna. Daniel didn't approach, not yet. He followed her instead. She got into a silver hatchback. and drove toward the outskirts of town. He kept 3 cars behind, steady and silent. She pulled into an apartment complex near Menands. Daniel parked down the block and waited until her lights went out. The next morning, he made his move. He showed up early and buzzed her apartment. No answer. He waited in the hallway until she stepped out, just after 7. "Lorna," he said. She looked at him, blinked once. "I'm sorry?" "It's me, Daniel." She tilted her head, confused but calm. "You must have me mistaken for someone else." "No, I don't. You're Lorna Hayes. You disappeared in 1970. I'm your brother." She didn't run, didn't panic. She just looked at him like someone watching a dog learning to speak. "Sir, I think you should go." She turned and walked down the stairs. Daniel followed her for 2 more days. On the 3rd night, he broke into her car, found a district ID, papers, and a blank manila envelope in the glove box, with only 2 things inside: a black and white photo of Fort Delaware, and a list of coordinates scribbled on the back of a receipt. No wallet, no personal items. Her name on the school badge was listed as Claire Langley. He ran her prints, nothing. No matches, not in the state database, not in the FBI's. It was as if she had no past, no birth certificate, no social security. The ID was real but freshly issued. No record of employment before this year. No listed address before her current one. She didn't exist before night. Daniel wasn't the only one watching her. Late one night, while parked down the street, he noticed a man in a dark sedan doing the same thing. The man had binoculars, radio in hand. Daniel crept close, ducking between bushes, and tapped the man's window with his pistol. The guy jumped. "Get out." The man hesitated, then slowly stepped out. Early 30s, square-jawed, a scar near his temple. "You're not school staff," Daniel said. "Who are you?" "Freelance investigator. I was hired to keep tabs on Ms. Langley." "By who?" "Can't say." "NDA." Daniel struck him across the face with the butt of the gun. The man dropped to his knees. "By who?" "Federal contractor." "Look, I don't know name. All I know is she doesn't have a legal past. No medical, no education, nothing. Wiped clean." Daniel handcuffed him to the car and left. When he returned 10 minutes later, the man was gone. Cuffs cut with bolt cutters. Clean escape. The next morning, Lorna, or Claire, was gone too. Her apartment had been emptied overnight. No trace of her. No neighbors saw her leave. Landlord said the lease was paid 6 months in advance. Cash, no forwarding address. Daniel went straight to the school, posed as a district officer. Asked about Ms. Langley. "She only worked here for 2 weeks. The secretary said she was filling in for someone. But we never had paperwork on her before she showed up." Daniel demanded records. The files were empty. He left that afternoon and drove 3 hours to Fort Delaware. The place was closed for the season. He bribed a ranger to let him in. Walked the damp stone corridors alone. Every room echoed with quiet. It felt wrong, like something had happened here. Something very real but deeply buried. In the back of the fort, he found the exact location from the photo in her car. It wasn't much, just an old supply shed. Inside, he found boot prints in the dust. One cigarette still burning in a can on the floor. Someone had been there recently. Then he saw it, fresh scratches near the back wall. He knocked against the brick, hollow. He pulled out his knife and began working at the wall. A loose panel shifted. Behind it, he found a steel door locked with a keypad. The kind used by military contractors, not tourists. Daniel stood there, breath rising in clouds, staring at the sealed door behind a tourist fort built in the 1800s. Something was buried here. Something connected to Lorna's past, and the people trying to erase. 3 years had passed since Daniel last saw Lorna. He had searched everywhere. Libraries, abandoned government facilities, dead-end addresses in multiple states. The Fort Delaware site had been sealed shut just days after his discovery. The next time he went back, the door was gone. Rebricked, patched like it never existed. But Daniel never let it go. He joined a private investigation firm operating out of Baltimore. It gave him access to law enforcement contacts and a long list of people who owed him favors. His gut told him this wasn't about one missing girl. It was about something bigger, and Lorna, whatever happened to her, was the key. Then in February, he got a call from a name he hadn't heard in a while. "Frank Callister," the voice said. "I tracked you through your old partner, Rory. You used to follow a woman named Claire Langley." Daniel sat up straight. "I'm listening. I think I just saw her in Kansas. She was driving a military van, government plates. She was traveling with a group of kids. Looked like some sort of school trip. But she wasn't teaching, she was watching." Daniel flew out the next morning. He landed in Wichita and rented a Ford. Frank met him at a gas station just off Highway 13 in Vev. "I couldn't get close," Frank explained, "but I followed them out to a nature reserve 2 hours west. Military personnel were there. But no uniforms, just badges and walkie-talkies." The two men drove west, through wide-open country. Snow lined the roadsides. Eventually they came to a fenced facility. No signs, no markings, but cameras pointed in every direction. They parked a half-mile away and hiked through the backwoods until they reached the rear perimeter. And there she was, standing by a charter bus in a windbreaker and jeans, holding a clipboard. Lorna. Daniel hadn't seen her in 3 years. Her hair was shorter now, her stance more confident. She moved like someone with military training. But it was her. "Are you sure?" Frank asked. "I'd know her with my eyes closed." They watched for an hour. At one point she spoke to a man in a blue jacket, tall, shaved head, earbud in one ear. He nodded, and she climbed aboard the bus. That night, Daniel and Frank returned to the site. The charter bus was still there. Lights out, no guards in sight. They crept to the edge of the lot. Daniel popped the lock on the rear service door. They slipped inside. No kids, just crates, labeled EU Serve 23. Inside were binders, maps, radios in one strange black case, with nothing written on it. Frank cracked it open. It held folders, files on people. Most were blank, no photos, just numbers and classifications. But one name stood out, Lorna Hayes. "Jesus Christ," Daniel muttered. Inside her file, a photo of her at 14. Notes on location, temperament, adaptability, and reprogram potential. Another page read, "History deleted, relocated, clearance level 3. Current identity Claire Langley." "What is this?" Frank whispered. Then came the sound of gravel crunching. They froze. Footsteps outside. "Someone's coming." Daniel grabbed the file. They slipped out the back just as 2 guards turned the corner. Flashlights swept the bus. "Hey, back there!" Gunfire erupted. Daniel and Frank ran hard through the trees. Bullets cracked past them, biting into bark. Daniel fired 2 shots behind him, just enough to make the guards duck. They reached the car, peeled off down the road, tires spraying snow. Back in Wichita, they split up. Frank took the file and agreed to scan it all. Daniel made his way back east, laying low. 3 days later, Frank stopped answering his phone. Daniel drove to his apartment in Baltimore. The door had been busted in. The place was stripped clean. No blood, no signs of struggle, just empty drawers and an unplugged lamp lying on the floor. Someone had taken him. Daniel got a burner phone and made one call to the only person he thought might help. Her name was Erica Devlin, former Air Force intelligence, now freelance. She owed Daniel for saving her brother during a gun deal gone wrong years ago. "Come alone," she said. They met in a diner in South Philly. Erica listened as Daniel explained everything. The girl, the disappearance, the fake identity, the classified file. Then she leaned in. "You're messing with a program that doesn't officially exist," she said. "There were rumors in the 70s, a group called REAC, Reintegration in Education, after compromise. They took kids from broken homes, street-level abductions, even minor runaways, wiped their pasts, turned them into something else. Why? Control, loyalty, clean slates, the kind of assets no one could trace. They'd use them in low-risk ops, education outreach, even infiltration if needed." Daniel clenched his jaw. Lorna was 14. She wasn't some broken kid. That's not the point. They needed candidates, not volunteers. If she vanished with no search or noise, she was perfect. Erica scribbled on a napkin. "There's one guy who used to process intake IDs, worked at a Department of Youth Integration site out of Oklahoma back in '74. Name's Glenn Radley. Last I heard, he was off the grid near Denver." Daniel left the next morning. It took him a week to find Glenn's place, a dusty cabin surrounded by old cars and silence. He approached with caution. The man who answered the door was in his 60s, thin, sharp eyes, cigarette in hand. "I ain't talked to anyone from those days in 20 years, he muttered. "I'm not here for you, I'm here for her." Daniel handed him the photo. Glenn took one long look. "Yeah," he said. "I remember her, bright, smart, fought harder than most. Where is she now?" "I don't know. They moved her west after 2 years, said she was ready." "For what?" Glenn stared at him. "To forget." Denver, 1984. Daniel sat in a cheap motel. The file on Lorna open in front of him. Glenn Radley's voice echoing in his head. "They moved her west, said she was ready. Ready to forget." It all made a sick kind of sense. If the government could erase someone's past, mold them into something new, then why stop at one girl? How many others had they buried beneath fake names, school ID cards, and field trip rosters? He stared at the grainy photo of Lorna, the same girl who vanished at 14. Now, she was 34. A full adult living under a name that wasn't hers, with memories that might not even be real. But Daniel hadn't come this far to let it go. A tip from Glenn led him to a local law firm, Miles and Thurmanello. Lorna, now going by Claire Langley, was listed as a junior chaperone liaison for an elite private school, Vail Ridge Academy. The school was taking students on a tour through Colorado's national monuments. Later that week, Daniel rented a sedan and followed the school convoy from the moment they rolled out. The buses were white with green stripes. Teachers and chaperones wore matching jackets. Then he saw her. Same strong stride, same eyes. She wore dark sunglasses, clipboard in hand, laughing with a student near the back of the line. Her voice still calm, still warm, cut through the dry wind. But Daniel noticed something else. 2 men stood near the front of the line, plain clothes, dark earpieces, watching everyone but mostly her. Their stances were stiff, too alert for school security. He grabbed his camera and snapped a photo. Then, without thinking, he stepped out of his car and approached the group. "Claire," he called out. She turned slightly, her brow furrowed. There was no spark of recognition, just polite confusion. "Yes?" Daniel stepped closer. "It's me, Daniel Reese. Don't you remember? You disappeared in night. We were friends. You told me about the boy who shoved you at the creek. You showed me your sketchbook under the bleachers. You were Lorna Hayes." Her face didn't change. "I'm sorry," she said. "You must be mistaken." One of the plainclothes agents stepped in. "That's enough. Move along, sir." Daniel held up the photo. "You know this is you. You disappeared at 14, and now you're here, pretending to be someone else. Why? What did they do to you?" The agent shoved him back. "Leave now, or we'll have you detained." Daniel stood his ground. "You erased her. You erased everything. The second agent pulled a pistol, kept it low by his hip, almost invisible to the students nearby. Daniel slowly stepped away, keeping his hands visible. He knew better than to provoke it in public, but he'd made contact. She'd heard his voice. That night he camped near the same monument where the school was scheduled to stay. He knew the area, knew how to avoid detection. He found a spot overlooking the teacher's cabin and waited. At midnight, someone slipped out of the back door. It was her. She walked cautiously into the woods, stopping beneath a lone pine tree. Daniel stepped out from behind a rock. "Lorna," she froze. "You shouldn't be here," she said quietly. "You remember?" She hesitated, then nodded. "I remembered the sketchbook. The boy at the creek. It hit me this morning like something cracking through a wall." He stepped closer. "What did they do to you?" She looked down. "They took me from the bus stop. I was waiting for my cousin. A man pulled up and said there was a mix-up at school, and I needed to come with him. I was scared, but he knew my name. He knew my mom's name. They had your whole file," Daniel said. "I've seen it. They didn't hurt me. Not at first. They moved me to a training center in Utah. Told me my parents had signed over custody. Said I was part of something important, that I was meant to lead, to help guide younger minds. Lorna, they lied to you." She blinked hard, fighting something behind her eyes. "They gave me pills, made me sit through hours of video, woke me up at 3 a.m. to reset my recall. It all felt foggy. I forgot birthdays, then faces, then my name. One day I couldn't even remember the street I lived on. That's when I stopped fighting." Daniel moved closer. "You don't have to stay in. Come with me. We can expose them." She looked up, pain flashing across her face. "They monitor everything. I have a handler assigned to me full time. If I vanish, it sets off alerts. The kids are just the cover. We're all being moved into towns, schools, places where they want eyes. You're not the only one, are you?" She shook her head. "There are dozens of us, maybe more. Some don't even know they've been rewritten." Suddenly, a branch snapped in the distance. They turned. One of the agents emerged from the shadows. "Freeze!" He raised his weapon. Lorna stepped in front of Daniel. "Don't," she said. But the man fired. Daniel ducked. The shot missed, grazing Lorna's arm. She screamed, stumbled back. Daniel returned fire. 1, 2 shots. One hit the agent in the shoulder. He dropped, groaning. Another agent came running from the camp, gun drawn. Daniel dragged Lorna behind a tree, checked her wound clean graze. She gritted her teeth. "We have to go." They sprinted through the woods, Daniel leading the way, winding down paths he'd scouted earlier. They reached the car by dawn and hit the highway. By the time they crossed into New Mexico, Lorna was fading. Her body was fine, but her mind was unraveling. "I don't know what's real," she whispered. "My name, Lorna, Claire. It all feels fake." Daniel pulled the car over. He turned to her. "You're real, that's what mattered. And whatever they did, whatever they tried to make you forget, we'll bring it back." 2 weeks later, with help from Erica Devlin, they smuggled Lorna into a safe house in Maine. She stayed there under full watch. No electronics, no outside contact. Daniel spent the next 2 years gathering proof documents, names, locations, every breadcrumb he could find. Lorna's file became the foundation of a larger case. In 1987, a leaked congressional hearing revealed the existence of RIAC. Public outrage followed. Several high-ranking officials disappeared. Others claimed the program was long since shut down. But Lorna, now 31, lived quietly under her real name again. She never fully recovered every memory, but she never forgot Daniel. If you like this story, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for a part 2. Also, in order to strengthen our community, let us know in the comments where you are watching from and what time you are currently watching this video.